You did it. You watched the videos. You gave yourself permission to move at your own pace. You built up the courage to take that first step. You pushed through the fear. And then it happened. You failed. Maybe the project didn't work out. Maybe the conversation went badly. Maybe you put yourself out there and got rejected. Maybe you tried your hardest and it still wasn't enough. And now you're sitting here feeling that familiar weight in your chest. That voice in your head is back. But this time it's louder, more convincing. It says, see, I told you, you weren't ready. You're not good enough. You should have stayed safe. And the worst part, you're starting to believe it. If that's where you are right now, I need you to hear this. You are not broken. You didn't waste your time. And this moment, this painful, humiliating, devastating moment is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of something far more valuable than success ever could have been. Today, we're going to talk about the one thing nobody prepares you for. What happens after you fall. How to get back up when your confidence is shattered. And why failure, real failure, might be the greatest teacher you'll ever have. We have a strange relationship with failure in our culture. On one hand, we romanticize it. We love the comeback story. We celebrate the entrepreneur who failed 10 times before succeeding. We quote Thomas Edison saying he didn't fail. He just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. But here's what we don't talk about. We only celebrate failure in retrospect, after the success, after the redemption arc, after the person has proven that the failure was just a plot point on the way to victory. But what about the failure that's happening right now? The one you're living through, the one that hasn't been redeemed yet, the one that might not have a happy ending. Nobody wants to talk about that failure. That failure is ugly, it's uncomfortable, it makes people look away, and that's the gap we need to bridge. Because you're not living in the inspirational Instagram post. You're living in the messy middle, where it still hurts, where you don't know if it's going to work out, where you're genuinely questioning whether you should keep going. So let me tell you something that might sound strange. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is not even a detour on the road to success. Failure is the road. Every person you admire, every person who has built something meaningful has failed more times than you can count. The difference isn't that they failed less. It's that they learned to metabolize failure differently. They learned to extract the lesson without internalizing the shame. And that's the skill we're going to build today. Because right now, you're doing something that's completely natural, but absolutely destructive. You're confusing the failure of the action with the failure of your identity. The project failed. That's a fact. But that doesn't mean you're a failure. That's a story. And it's a story you need to stop telling. Let's dissect what actually happened. Not the emotional version, the mechanical version. You identified something you wanted. You gathered the courage to try. You took action. And the outcome didn't match your expectation. That's it. That's the entire sequence. But somewhere in that process, your brain added a narrative. It said, this didn't work because I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough, I'm not worthy enough. And that narrative is a lie. Here's what actually happened. You ran an experiment, you tested a hypothesis. The hypothesis was, if I do X, Y will happen. And the data came back, no, Y didn't happen, something else happened instead. That's not failure. That's feedback. But your brain doesn't process it as feedback. Your brain processes it as a threat. Because evolutionarily, being rejected by the tribe meant death. So when you experience failure, especially public failure, your nervous system reacts as if your survival is at stake. That's why it feels so visceral, why it keeps you up at night, why you replay the moment over and over, analyzing what you should have done differently. Your body thinks you're in danger, but you're not. You're just learning. So the first step in recovering from failure is to separate the outcome from your identity. The outcome is external. It's data. Your identity is internal. It's who you choose to be in response to the data. And here's the shift that changes everything. You need to start measuring yourself not by the outcome, but by the response. Did you try? That's courage. Did you learn something? That's growth. Did you get back up? That's resilience. Those are the metrics that matter. Not whether it worked, but whether you showed up. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's easy to say, but I still failed. I still wasted time. I still look foolish. And you're right, you did fail. But let me reframe what that actually means. Failure means you were in the arena. You weren't in the stands, safe and comfortable, criticizing others. You were on the field. taking the hits, doing the work. And everyone in the stands? They're not safer than you. They're just more invisible. Their lack of failure isn't a sign of competence. It's a sign of inaction. You have something they don't. Evidence. Evidence that you tried. Evidence that you're willing to risk. Evidence that you're growing. So when you look at your failure, I want you to ask a different question. Not why did this happen to me, but what is this teaching me? This is the part most people skip. They either wallow in the failure, letting it define them, or they bypass it entirely, pretending it didn't hurt, rushing to the next thing without processing what happened. Both of those responses are avoidance. And avoidance means you don't extract the lesson, which means you're likely to repeat the same mistake. So we're going to do something different. We're going to mine the failure for wisdom. Here's how. Get out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and answer these 3 questions with brutal honesty. Question 1. What was in my control? Not the outcome. The outcome is always partially outside your control. There are too many variables, other people's decisions, market conditions, timing, luck. But your effort, your preparation, your attitude, your persistence, those were in your control. So write down, what did I actually control in this situation? And did I show up fully in the areas I could control? If the answer is yes, then you have nothing to regret. You played your best hand with the cards you were dealt. The outcome was just the outcome. If the answer is no, if you know you held back, if you know you didn't prepare, if you know you self-sabotaged, that's valuable information too. Not for shame, for adjustment. Question 2. What surprised me? Failure always contains a surprise. Something you didn't predict, something you didn't see coming. That surprise is where the learning lives. Maybe you thought people would react one way and they reacted another. Maybe you thought a strategy would work and it didn't. Maybe you overestimated your skills or underestimated the challenge. Write down what surprised you, because that's the gap between your model of reality and actual reality. And closing that gap is how you get better. Question 3. What would I do differently? Not in a self-punishing way, in a strategic way. If you could run this experiment again with the knowledge you have now, what would you adjust? Maybe you'd prepare more. Maybe you'd ask for help sooner. Maybe you'd set different expectations. Maybe you'd choose a different approach entirely. Write it down, because that's your new hypothesis. And the next time you step into the arena, you'll be smarter, more prepared, more calibrated to reality. This process isn't about dwelling on the failure. It's about extracting the signal from the noise. It's about turning pain into data, data into strategy, strategy into your next attempt. Because here's the truth. You're going to fail again, not because you're bad at this, but because failure is the cost of entry for anything worth doing. The question isn't whether you'll fail, it's whether you'll fail forward. Now comes the hardest part, getting back up, because here's what nobody tells you. The second attempt is harder than the first. The first time, you had naive optimism. You didn't know how hard it would be. You didn't know how much it would hurt to fail. You were protected by your ignorance. But the second time, you know exactly what's at stake. You know the fear is real. You know failure is possible. You're walking back into the arena with scar tissue, and that's why the second attempt takes more courage than the first. But it also carries more wisdom, more resilience, more depth. The first attempt was an experiment. The second attempt is a choice. You're choosing to try again, not because you're naive, but because you've decided that the pursuit matters more than the outcome. You're choosing to value growth over comfort. You're choosing to become the kind of person who doesn't quit just because something is hard. And that choice, that's where your power lives. Because you can't control whether you succeed, but you can control whether you quit. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to make a decision, not about the outcome, about the attempt. Are you willing to try again? Not perfectly, not with a guarantee, just willing to step back into the arena, knowing you might fail again and doing it anyway? If the answer is yes, then you're no longer the person who failed. You're the person who persists. And that identity is worth more than any single success. If the answer is no, if you're genuinely not ready yet, that's okay too. Rest, heal, process. But don't confuse rest with quitting. Rest is strategic. It's gathering your strength. Quitting is permanent. It's walking away from the person you could become. Know the difference. Let me tell you what I see when I look at you. I don't see someone who failed, I see someone who tried. I don't see someone who's broken, I see someone who's learning what they're made of. I don't see someone who should give up. I see someone who's one attempt closer to the breakthrough. Because here's the secret that failure teaches you. Success doesn't prove your worth. Everyone gets lucky sometimes. Everyone has a good day. Everyone catches a break. But failure reveals your character. It shows you who you are when things don't go your way, when the universe says no, when your plans crumble. And the fact that you're still here, still listening, still considering the next step, that tells me everything I need to know about you. You're not fragile, you're resilient. You're not defeated, you're recalibrating. You're not done, you're just getting started. So take the lesson, adjust the strategy, and when you're ready, step back into the arena. Not because you're guaranteed to win, but because the person you become by trying is worth more than the safety of never risking it all. The world needs people who fall and get back up, people who fail and extract the wisdom, people who hurt and keep going anyway. The world needs you, not the perfect version, the real version, the one with scars and stories and the quiet strength that only comes from surviving the fall. So here's my challenge. Take 24 hours. Let yourself feel it. The disappointment, the hurt, the embarrassment. Feel it fully. And then get back up. Not because it's easy, but because you're the kind of person who doesn't stay down. I'll see you in the arena.